Hi there, and thank you for clicking on my video. Today's video is going to be talking about Overguard and how to deal with Overguard. Um, the idea behind dealing with Overguard is pretty simple. If you're the reason why Overguard feels so off is because, just to be upfront about it, is because you're not gaining the boosted damage or the an element's damage ignoring, like say if you're shooting a Grineer unit that's weak to corrosive and you shoot it with corrosive, you might be used to seeing your damage numbers be about the same. You have to basically mentally think of Overguard as like a different enemy while the shield is up in terms of what your damage numbers are going to be. So for those that are looking for a quick answer, if you're struggling to kill them, you're looking for a raw damage build. Sea-Doo is really recommended by me. The Phantasma, anything where it has like a really, really strong dot or really, really strong upfront damage, where it's not really reliant on, say, like a combination of procs, like a self-priming slash weapon, where you would need the bonus from viral to boost the slash procs into something relevant. So weapons that you've modded that go really, really hard and have a lot of modded damage or are focused on a specific damage type are affected less, more or less. But let's talk about like some basic mechanics with it. We are going to test out, let's just make sure this is unmodded. Okay. We're going to use the Sea-Doo, super low status chance on the primary. We're going to load up some bombards. Jakar Manic Bombards, weak to radiation. They have a ton of EHP. They're weak to viral. Um, and because the Sea-Doo on the main fire is pure puncture, gives us nice even numbers. We're not worried about quantization at all. So let's see what we get. We're getting 30s and 72s. Fair enough. Let's first test if we're like shields and armor. There might be some influence between the layers of defense. Let's just check and show that Overguard counts as a separate thing. It's a separate health pool. So let's do radiation, which is what these guys are weak to. Actually, let's do this. Okay, so we're going to add 105% modded damage. It's going to boost our damage a little over double. So we were getting 30 base, a 30 white number, so a non-crit, and a 72 crit. So we should be looking for something that's around 72, a little bit more, uh, as a white number, and crits should give or take double. All right, so we're getting 62 white, 148 crit. Easy enough. So modded damage is taken into effect, but it also tells us, because the number was only doubled, give or take, that we are not receiving the element bonus based on the enemy's weakness. So if you are really, really, really having trouble against Eximus units, consider modifying your build or maybe running a primer. But let's go through and see what a proper build is. Let's talk about this one, okay? So we know what we're gonna test. Galvanized Savvy adds status chance. Status chance interacts with the Sea-Doo really well because of the alt fire. The weapon has its own built-in equivalent of Savvy, so doubling up the bonus is really, really nice. Increasing base damage is obviously going to increase our damage. Multi-shot is obviously going to increase our damage. Hunter Munitions is going to allow us to proc a slash proc, which will give us the dot on a crit, right? Crit chance, crit damage. Sorry, crit chance, and I was using Frostbite. And crit damage will also increase our damage. regardless of what the enemy's defense is. So what we're left with is essentially modding. So this is set up for viral. Let's just double check that viral is also not boosting our damage, and we'll start testing different stuff. So now that we know what we're not adding to see how we can boost our damage, we're going to know what we have left, right? So if the Overguard is not being affected by viral, it doesn't count. The wiki says this shouldn't boost it, but let's just go ahead and check. So 66, 157. We got a status proc. Okay, we're going to go back to shooting this one. 66, 157. Easy enough. Alright, we got a status proc, so we're going to stop shooting because the Sea-Doo's built-in damage bonus based on status is starting to take effect. So let's see what else we can do. Okay, so we know status effect doesn't matter, and let's test one more thing. Because this always goes in and out. Magnetic, right? So let's see how this does. This should also not affect it. Alright, it got a status proc. 66, 157. We're seeing the same thing. So all's well that's end well. So we now know we need base damage, and if we want to be more effective against Eximus units, we need a big dot. Now the good thing about Overguard is that it doesn't really have any plus and minuses in terms of its weakness. It has a plus to void damage, and we can see that here. Does a couple thousand, and then we go back down to weaker numbers. So couple hundred. Let's see what we can get over here. We're in the couple thousands. So even with the headshot crit damage increase, we know that in our back pocket we can always use that to strip. There are ways to boost it. Like you can swap out for Void Strike. If you really want to try to burn them down and you got a strong amp. Right? And it's gone. You know, 50, 60, 150k I think was one. Wait for it to pile back up. Drain it back down. Get our crit back. Okay, 13k, 9k. Damage is doing pretty good. So if you got a strong amp with good arcanes that you've added, I'm using the crit damage on headshot and crit chance on energy drain to boost the damage quite a bit. So that would give us a pretty decent amount of damage, but obviously it can be pretty tedious using that to strip Overguard, and especially on Steel Path and like doing longer runs, it can be pretty tedious, but it's there, right? Like it's definitely a thing. So let's actually build to deal, like to actually build appropriately to be able to deal with this damage type. So we're going to add damage. Merciless. Of course, we're going to have aiming mutation. Actually, let's do this. We're going to do our basics. Multi-shot. Savvy. Crit chance. Sorry, crit damage. Oh, sorry about that. We got to test one more thing. Okay, so we're going to test one more time. Going to shoot him a bit. $39.94. Easy enough. Actually, hold on. Yeah, $39.94. Faction mods. Alright, now we're getting 61... Oh, got a puncture product. 61, 146. Okay, so faction mods do give us a bonus also. So it still counts as a Grenier health pool, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and build up our weapon. We're going to do crit. We're going to do multi-shot. We're going to do damage. Going to do some Grenier. And we're going to build now for the biggest source of damage that we can. And one of the things, as weird as this is, if you are really having trouble and you're running a shotgun, it doesn't matter how much or what the damage type is. It just matters that you have a shit ton of it. Okay? So one of the things we can actually do is mod for magnetic because of what the prime mods are. This is not a recommended build, but I'm just saying if you're really, really having a tough time with it, you can run a heavy, heavy raw damage to get the bonus. One of the things you could also do is do a viral. Do like a chilling reload and then do heat to get the raw damage up as much as possible. Sorry. Okay, viral heat. Just to get as much raw damage as possible. Because we are going to be using the status chance. It's not going to go to waste. But it's going to give us more upfront damage and scaling on the passive. So let's see how fast we can kill with this. So even though they're weak to radiation, viral heat, even though I'm not using the heat dot, well, I guess I did there a little bit. The heat dot is getting a chance to give a little bit of armor shred, but we are not killing with the heat dot. But this would give us the proper scaling, where we wouldn't be relying on like a self-priming weapon, so we wouldn't be doing like viral hunter munitions. Like something like this, right? Where we're using the viral status to boost our slash damage to be relevant. Right? So hunter munitions, instead of getting the stack from viral and then the boost from the faction damage, we're only getting the slash ticks boosted by the faction damage alone, plus the base damage and the crit tier. So that's probably what you're noticing when you shoot like an Overguard, an enemy with Overguard, is you're losing the 325% bonus damage to it. You're also losing the armor strip that you would normally get, and the damage bonus that would result from the enemy having less armor, right? Especially if you're doing like a corrosive heat build. Like a corrosive heat build. Say you don't have the faction. Let's swap this out. We'll do Gel Shock, Toxic. Hold on, I can get rid of this. Scattering Inferno. And Hunter Munitions. Okay. So with something like this, if you're running Corrosive Heat, is fantastic against the Grenier, right? Especially with Hunter Munitions. And if you don't need fire rate. But the issue is if most of your damage is coming from Hunter Munitions, against like enemies with alloy armor, like what we have up right now, and I'm going to load back in, you're not going to get what you would be used to seeing because there's no shred occurring from corrosive and heat. So it would come across as way, way weaker because you're probably so used to seeing the numbers that you would get from shred, where now you can see how much slower it is. And then once the The Overguard's down. So once the slash kicks in, and then we'll do it without priming, right? So you can see how weak the slash procs are. We're only getting like 100. But then we shred. The corrosive and heat kicks in. And we can boost it through the raw damage increase of the Sea-Doo. Weapons like the Sea-Doo and like the Zeraman weapons really don't have problems with Overguard because they're getting raw damage increases, and the Zeraman weapons like the Latum, the Felarks, and the Fenmore are damage increases, like multiplicative damage increases, so you can just burn through the enemies because it's a damage increase. It's not dependent on you getting your damage being boosted through status effects. So if you're noticing that there's a bit of a weak spot in your build, one of the things you can do is just make sure you get headshots. Go ahead and kill that guy, bring him back. Right? So if you're used to seeing something like that, when you're shooting them pretty low, go for a headshot, the damage goes back up into the thousands. Obviously I don't have any stacks right now. Let's prime them. And now we're starting to get 10,000s on this build. And it's with no faction. So, damage in the 10,000s. At least in the 1,000, which everybody's capable of doing. So that's probably what you're noticing when you're shooting Overguard enemies, is where if you run like a heavy status chance build and your damage is reliant on self-priming, you're not gaining that damage bonus. So even with all of this other stuff, if I wanted to make this a little more viable, you could throw on something like this. Actually, let me get Vernier, armaments. Good enough. Actually, fire rate. Alright, easy enough. And you would find that the slash procs would do way more. Because I focused on, not that you would ever run this, because it's a Sea-Doo, but just to show. Before we were getting slash ticks in the hundreds. Now they're all in the thousands. And then if we add headshots into it, back in the 10,000s. The 1,000s probably got fall off hitting pretty hard. Yeah, Overguard, once you go for like a more raw damage build, start getting like faction mods involved, you'll find a lot of your damage is back. So if you're running like a self-priming setup, this is probably what's happening. Why you seem like you're having damage issues with it. It's just Overguard isn't giving you the benefit of like the raw damage increase from an enemy that has like 10 stacks of corrosive, the armor shred from heat, and that sort of stuff on the raw damage. So if you're having issues, consider swapping over to like a more raw damage setup on your primary, and maybe taking advantage of something like the Panzer or like a viral primer can definitely put in work against those units, because you need like a bigger dot or more raw damage. Just flat raw damage is generally what it is. And there are a couple weapons where they're like really notorious for like having like a really strong dot, and one of them is the Phantasma, and I'll show you how this weapon does way better. So it's A crit build, even got a Riven on it, minus impact, plus heat, status, chance, and magazine. It's a strong Riven, not a god roll, but it is a strong Riven. So crit chance, crit damage, galvanized hell, galvanized savvy, merciless, prime ammo mutation, faction, more importantly. And technically, because of the Riven, it's a triple heat mod. So just as an example, so if you're using a weapon that is heavy, heavy, heavy on a single dot, you will notice that you're not really having that much of an issue anymore with Overguard because all of your damage is loaded onto a single source and isn't reliant on self-priming, which is probably the thing that Overguard is messing you up on. Where did my Overguard go? So as you can see, because all of my damage is loaded into the heat dot and isn't reliant on self-priming, the Overguard goes away significantly faster on a dot build because it's not reliant on damage elsewhere boosting the damage up. It's not reliant on self-priming, so I'm not running like a corrosive heat build or like a viral heat build. So if you just swap over or modify your builds for something like that, the Overguard tends to not be an issue anymore. And you can obviously prime it with something else, but this is generally the slight modification that you have to do build-wise. So if you're used to seeing specific damage numbers with like corrosive heat for like raw damage increase, and then like the resulting slash procs from like a viral boost from like from the boosted health damage from the viral status from say like a Panzer, you're not getting that stuff. So you're seeing what your damage is with like no no additions to its raw damage. It's not getting modified any. So the armor value that the enemy has is still there. That being said, we are using Caliban for a reason. Let's pull up some Eximus again. So as you can see, there's Overguard. You can strip through it, but it doesn't help the boosted damage. It's about the same. So yeah, like 1.3, 1.5 million. It's still really solid with a build like this, and you can do just as well with like if you don't have the Riven, put Blaze there. Put Blaze right here. Honestly, because of the dispo, it would probably work better, and we can test that. Yeah, around 10K. Three-quarters of a mil, 1.5 mil, little over a mil. Yeah, 1.5 mil. It's a really strong combo. So just modify your build slightly so like you're actually getting the dot or the raw damage from your weapon is boosted by the mods on it. It isn't so reliant on the status effects and like self-priming, and that'll fix your Overguard issue. So you can strip their armor. Even Reeve works because it's on health damage, so it'll bypass it. And if you're running Revenant with a high enough strength, and in that case, Viral would help. So you can prime it with Viral, and then Reeve through an enemy, and it'll give you the one tap. So that's also an option. But anyway, I hope this helps. Thank you guys for watching. Take it easy. Stay excellent. Stay blessed.